Hello everyone, welcome to Biology with a Difference with your instructor Babita Rani. I'm not a tech freak, but I am doing this just on demand of my students by learning technology bit by bit every day. Hope you like it. Let us begin our class by a simple affirmation. I am learning by chunking and improving by each passing day. Hope you did the affirmation. Let's begin the class. This is for students of Standard 9, the fundamental unit of life. What is the fundamental unit of life? As you have studied in class 8, cell is the fundamental unit of life. Every organism is made up of cells. Let's see what Robert Hooke did for cells. He was the first scientist to observe a cell. And how did he observe that cell? He observed that cell with his self-designed microscope. He himself had designed that microscope and he observed the cell. But what he has observed was not a living cell. It was a dead cell. So Robert Hooke was the first scientist to observe a cell by his self-designed microscope, but the cell that he observed was dead. Leeuwenhoek was another scientist who observed first living cell. Microscope was further improved and so he was able to observe the first living cell. So the credit goes to Leeuwenhoek for observing first living cell. After further improvements in the microscope, Robert Brown was able to discover nucleus. He was the first who discovered nucleus and named it. J.E. Purkinje termed protoplasm. The term protoplasm, we will discuss all of these one by one, was given by J.E. Purkinje. Sheldon and Schwann are two scientists who are associated with cell theory. Sheldon was a botanist and Schwann was a zoologist. Both of them were working in two different countries at almost contemporary period, and hence both of them are awarded as who formulated the cell theory. What does this cell theory states? Cell theory states that every living organism is made up of a cell. That means all the organisms that we see on this planet is ultimately made up of cell. So cell is the basic unit of life. Without cell, life would not exist. This cell theory was further modified by Virchow. What did he say? He said all the cells arise from pre-existing cells. That means no new cells are formed. Every cell arises from pre-existing cells. And these two together formulated the cell theory. What are the three facts in cell theory? First is every living organism is made up of cell. Second is cell is the basic fundamental unit of life. And third is all the cells arise from pre-existing cells. Now cells are structural and functional unit of life. This is a very important statement. Structural. What do we mean by structural? Every living organism on this earth begins its life with cell. That means begins its life with a cell. Then cells will divide, divide to form tissues. Tissues further combine together to form organs. Organs combine together to form organ system, and organ systems combine together to form an individual. But life began with a single cell. Life begins, whether it is a plant or an animal, life begins with a single cell. If we consider a sexual reproducing organism, we can say life begins with a single cell, which is known as zygote. Zygote will divide, redivide to form embryo, and finally an individual will be formed. So every living organism begins its life with a cell. What do we mean by functional unit of life? Functional unit of life means all the functions that we see across in an organism is performed inside a cell. Because if we move backward, what happens? An individual has many organ systems. Many organ systems have different organs to combine, form an organ system. Organ systems are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. So every function that is performed in a living organism is performed inside a cell. Hence, cell is known as structural and functional unit of life. Hope you understood why do we call cell as structural and functional unit of life. Cell is called structural unit of life because every living organism begins its life with a cell, and it is called functional unit of life because all the functions are performed inside a cell. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the learning.